Okay, so this is not the most perfect video. This is for primarily my daughter, who requested that I make one showing how to do a granny square because she learns better by videos that she can pause and rewatch. So this is going to be how to make a granny square that does not twist. So what we're going to do is we are going to go start with a slip knot on your hook and then a chain of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so we have that chain of 4. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can see my hands for this next part. So we have the chain of 4 is our start. Some people will say to start with a magic circle. I'm not a big fan of the magic circle because they tend to break open after a while, and then you wind up with a hole in the center of your project. I've never had this break. So if you start with a chain of 4, and yes, you can still get it tight in the center. That's why I have a very long tail, and that's important. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over this way, and I'm going to look for this bumpy back part ridge on the first stitch. So you see where your knot is, and you see the little raised bump. I'm going to insert my hook under that. So I have 2 loops on my hook now, and I'm going to pull through both of those loops, and I have made my little circle. So you see how you have a little circle right there. Okay, now this is important. You just want to make sure you go into that bottom circle, not the top circle on the next spot. Okay, so now here's how I do it. It's not everybody likes to do the chain 3. I do the chain 3 because this is how I was taught, and this is a mindless project for me. So I'm going to go up 3 with a chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So that chain 3 at the start of your round will always count as the first stitch at the start of the round. Okay, so now we're going to double crochet 2 times into the center circle. 1 and 2. Pull out a little more yarn. We got yarn bars. Give me just a moment. Got a knotted yarn bars. All right. Finish off that double crochet. All right, so we have our second double crochet. All right, so what a granny stitch is, it is a cluster of 3 double crochets. Okay, so this is the first cluster for the start of your project to make a granny square. All right, so now we need to turn the corner. So we're going to do 2 chains, 1 and 2. And now we're going to go back with 3 more double crochets. And it is important for the purpose of tightening your center ring that you crochet around your tail. That's why you want that long tail. So that was the first double crochet for the next cluster. 2 and 3 double crochets. Okay, so as you can see, we have this little tiny, it's a little blurry, sorry. We have this little tiny L shape that's kind of backwards. All right, so we're going to chain 2 again. 1 and 2. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out so that this stops struggling on what it wants to focus on today. All right, now we're going to do 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so now we have 3 double crochets. So we're about to turn the corner again. So we're going to do 2 chains. Okay. then you're going to do 3 more double crochets. All right, so we are at the last side of our square, okay? And this is the spot where people will go off track and make a mistake when they do their double crochet, is when they do their close of the first round. It is absolutely of the most importance that before you slip stitch to close the round, that you chain 2, because that's got to make that corner to close the round. So you're going to chain 2, and then you're going to slip stitch back into your first set of clusters and the top of the chain 3. And this is also important because this is where people will make mistakes. They will think this stitch right here is the top of the chain 3. That is not the top of your chain 3. That is actually the second chain in the chain 3. You have one chain here, one chain here. The top of the chain 3 is actually looks like it's on top of the next double crochet. So you're gonna slip your hook underneath that, and you're going to pull the loop through that and the loop that's on your hook. And now you can see you have a little tiny square. Okay, now there are several different types of granny squares. You'll have some called continuous grannies, where they continue and they just keep going around and around and around without turning the work. That is fine if you want to do that, but then you wind up with a lot of slip stitches in your project, because you have to then start doing a process called slip stitch back to the corner as it grows, and you get more and more slip stitches across your project. So what I do, and I prefer to do, is I do turn mine every round, because the other issue with a continuous granny square, especially if you're changing colors, it starts to get like this twisted spiral. It twists around and it'll start to look twisted, spirally appearance instead of a nice, neat square. And I like a nice, neat square. So before I chain 3, to make sure I stay in my corner, I turn my project, and that chain 2 that I just made, I make another slip stitch into the corner. Now I don't go into one of the chains, I go around the chain. So I'm going to go under that chain 2 space, grab my yarn and go under the chain, and then through the loop on the hook. All right, so now I've turned the corner back this way, and then I'm going to chain up 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I've chained up 3, and now I'm going to do 2 double crochets in this corner. So we've done 2 double crochets. All right, so I've started back heading this way to go around, and we will finish up back at this corner when we make our round all the way around. Okay, so now some people will tell you to chain 1 and then go into your next set of clusters. I don't do that. I like my granny squares to be tight, so that they don't have giant gaping holes in between the clusters. So I don't chain. That's just your personal preference, a personal preference thing. So if you want to chain, you can chain, but I don't do that because I'm not fond of the way that looks, and I find it weakens the blanket after it's been used if you're making something like a blanket, so I don't chain. So we're going to make our next set of clusters in the corner around it. Don't ever go into any chains while doing granny squares. You're going around the chain spaces. So go under the chain space. All right. So now we have our next side, and I'm going to chain 2 to turn the corner, and we have to go back into that corner. Okay, when you're turning a corner, you're always going to have in your corners a set of 2 clusters in the corner with a chain 2 between them. This is the only time you have chains when I'm doing a granny square. So we're going to go back into that corner, with 3 more double crochets. All right. And then we're going to work into our next corner. So we're going to do 3 double crochets. All right, so we've done our 3 double crochets, and we're going to chain 2. And then we're going to go back into that same corner with 3 more double crochets. All right. And also I want to show you how remember how we crocheted around the center starting string where I had left that long tail. I can pull that super tight and see how that hole just about vanished. And then when I'm finished with my project, I'll take this string and I'll weave it through that center to make sure it's really good and tight and never comes undone. All right. So we have finished this corner. We're going to go do it again. So 3 double crochets. And another double crochet. So there's our set of 3. And since we're in the corner, chain 2, 1, 2. And then we're going to do 3 more double crochets. All right, so we're coming back to where we started. And remember, we started the round with a set of 3 already. So all we have to do right here is 1 more set of 3 double crochets right here where our chain 3 start is, okay? So we're gonna do 3 double crochets. All right, we've got our 3 double crochets, but we cannot forget that chain 2 before we slip stitch back into our start. So we do our chain 2, find that 3rd stitch, which is actually right here. Pull through that loop and through the loop on the hook for your slip stitch. All right. We have closed the square. We're gonna turn and we're gonna slip stitch back under to get to the start. Okay. There we go. So we have our 2nd round complete, okay? So I'm gonna do 2 more rounds with you for the purpose of this video, and then we'll call it done, and you can continue this process around until it's as big as you want it. All right, so we're gonna chain up 3, 1, 2, and 3, and we're gonna do 2 double crochets right here, 1 and 2. All right, there's the 2nd. All right, so now we are dealing with this chain space right here, okay? And we're not just dealing with corners and turning the corners. Now we've added more chain spaces. So all you do when you come to this chain space right here is you're gonna do 3 double crochets. And yes, I'm still calling it a chain space, even though I don't do the chain when I'm doing it, because that's just what they're called. Because traditionally you do put a chain in between them. But like I said, I don't like that because I like it to be nice and tight and very uniform. And I find the chain spaces make the holes too big. All right. So we put our 3 double crochets in the chain space. And then we're at the corner again. So you're going to do 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to do 1, 2, and then we're going to do 3 right back in the corner, because you always have the 2 sets of clusters separated by a chain 2 in your corner, so don't ever forget that, or you will wind up with a triangle and not a square. Alright. And then we have our chain space. And we're going to do 3 double crochets in the chain space. Now, as you add each round, I'm going to point this out on this side right here. So you have your corner, chain space, another chain space, and then corner. And so it's just going to keep growing by 1 to 2 chain spaces per round as you grow your square, as you complete each round. All right, and we're back in the corner. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and then we'll do 1, 2, 3 again in the corner to make our corner. And 3, all right, and then we do in our chain space our 3. 1, 2, and 3. And we've got the corner again. 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2, and 1, 2, and 3. So we've made our corner, and we're back on our last side before we have to do our slip stitch close. We're going to do 3 right here. And 3. And then we come back here. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2. Find that top of that 3rd chain, go under it, pull through. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish off mine, because this is where I'm going to stop. And I'm going to get some scissors here and cut it, just so you can see how to finish this off. So I pull this like this and pull it real tight, and then I will take a needle. I'd take a needle and then weave this through the clusters to hide the tail, and then this I'll take a needle and weave it around and around real tight, and then cut it to tighten it off and close up the center circle. And that's how you do the granny square, and you can continue your rounds around until it's as big as you want it to, but that's a basic granny square in the process that I do it in. So thank you for joining Kids Crochet Tutorials, and y'all have a good day.